So, howdy, welcome back to my channel, ladies and gents. The sorting buckets bins over there. Um, anyway, so I'm going to talk very briefly about something that me and my friend who play Yu-Gi-Oh have talked about. Um, we find that I'm finding that hand traps limit creativity in the game. Hand traps and archetype only decks make it difficult to play the game. Now, I'm not stating I hate games that are just solitaire. If I'm gonna play a board game or a trading card game, I want interaction. That's the whole point. I want interaction. If I can't interact with the board state, why the hell am I playing a game that I love so much? So Yu-Gi-Oh is an example of that. I'm gonna go through the card pool of my favorite deck to play, some of the combos, some of the things that make it creative. And you will notice one thing. There is no hand traps. There are only board breaker cards. Some of them being traps, some of them being monsters. But they are board breakers. They are not hand traps. I have no problem with in archetype hand traps. I have no problem with in archetype board breakers. What I have a problem with is generic archetype support, like generic hand traps. That's what I have a problem with in Yu-Gi-Oh. My boss monster in my burn deck are these two little chaos necromancers, which technically by themselves aren't that impressive. But when you look at all the other cards that I build up around these two cards, it actually gets pretty impressive. Okay? So these are my draw cards. Now I'm running a 60 card deck, and of which my draw cards are 21 cards. And technically, these draw cards, if you include the cards that they are able to get, is roughly 90% of my deck. That's you can have access to 90% of this deck from 21 cards. So I have two magic cylinders, which of course sets out magic cylinder, a burn card. Boom. One card combos. Okay? That's two, which equals four. Okay? Two, supply squad. So anytime a monster dies, I get card advantage. Ice hand times three summons a fire hand when destroyed, and it can destroy a spell and trap. Fire hand destroys a monster on the field. Of course, it targets. So anything with targeting protection, I can't target, but I can still special summon an ice hand. Witch of the Black Forest times three. Sangan times three. Giant Germ times two. Nimble times three. This is all just the draw package. It draws other cards out, special summons them without needing all that extra card advantage. And because it's drawn out from the deck, not from the hand, Max C doesn't even get card advantage from it because it has to be special summoned from hand, not deck. For board breakers, I have three board breakers in my entire deck. Find it. Sorry, I had things really weirded out. Okay. Um, so I have two lava golems and an evenly matched, and then in my extra deck I had the third lava golem. So if I really needed to switch it out for anything, I could. Okay. And then hang on. to stop my to basically stall cards. 4, 5. Where's Oh, that's right. It's in the thing. So to hurt my opponent or to stop them from playing, I have Swords of Revealing Light, Inset Barrier, DNA Surgery, and Gravity Bind. Now, DNA Surgery and Inset Barrier are a combo in and of itself. It's a two-card combo, but it gets the job done. It prevents my opponent's monsters from attacking, which basically is what I want it to do. For life gain cards, I have Numinous Healer and Gift of the Mystical Elf. For other board break type cards, I have Thunder Crash, Harpy's Feather Duster. Let's say I'm able to break their boss monster. I'm able to use monster board and bring their boss monster back to my side, just to punish them. Begone Knave. If a monster inflicts battle damage to a player, return that monster to the hand. That basically means any monster that is a normal or effect monster goes back to hand. Any extra deck monster goes back to the extra deck. This is basically a board clearer just by its inception of I play mostly defensively, you never know what you're going to get. Solemn Wishes. Each time you draw a card, gain 500 life. That's a life point gain card. I'm sorry, I forgot. Toll Hike. Each player must send a card from their hand to the graveyard to declare an attack. That basically punishes the player that's got the most card advantage from playing. Nightmare Wheel, 500 during your opponent's standby. Ring of Destruction destroys one monster. Meteor Flare, if your opponent has more than 3,000 life points, inflict 2,000 damage to your opponent, and it can be re-added to hand instead of drawing a standard card. Dark Snake Syndrome, inflict 200 points of damage to you and your opponent, starting with 200 and then doubling it each turn. Dark Room of Nightmare. Each time you inflict damage to your opponent, slide points inflict 300 more. Cauldron of the Old Man. Gain 500 life or inflict 300 to your opponent. Toll. Each player must pay 500 points to declare an attack. Chain Energy. To play a card, you must pay 500 points. Attack and receive times 2. If your opponent attacks you, he receives uh, 700 points of damage and inflict 300 points of damage for each one in the grave. Wait Motion Can, which is now legal at 1 copy. 1,000 points of damage for each turn. It remains face up on the field. If your opponent doesn't have the out, he's shafted. Desquala, 400 points for each card in hand. Stealth Bird, flip face up, flip back face down. 2,000 points per turn if it goes off smoothly. And Marshmallow, 1,000 points of attack while face down. And Poison Mummy for an extra 500 points. I technically have enough life point damage cards in this deck to ruin my opponent if I have a good hand and good draw package within 3 turns. I like playing with my opponent. Those mind games are quite wonderful because I love mind fucking my opponent. So, you know, that's what I mean by archetype specific decks remove creativity in the deck. Now we'll go to one of my other favorite decks to play in the past, which is of course Blue Eyes, and we'll go with what basically amounts to what the modern Blue Eyes deck looks like, and we'll see why it's playing solitaire. So let me see if I can find it real quick. This is my Fake Magician deck. This is my God Turbo deck. This is my Blue Eyes deck. and you will pretty much be able to see why you can't play the game. Okay? Maiden of White brings out a card. Thins your deck by one. Sage with Eyes of Blue. This special summons one level 1 light tuner from deck. Uh, Blue Eyes White Dragon. And of course, in this card, because this is a structure deck build, I do have hand traps, but I hate using hand traps. They're just a waste of deck space. So we have 3 Ash Blossoms, 3 Nibiru's, um, and 3 Effect Veilers. Now, Nibiru I wouldn't consider a hand trap. I would consider this a board breaker because that's what it does. It breaks your opponent's board, puts them a token with the attack points of the entire thing, and special summons itself to your side of the field. This is a board breaker. This is a hand trap. Effect Veiler is also a hand trap, but it's before hand traps became popular. So I would consider this, if I were to make some hand traps legal, I would make this and like Karibo at least legal. Um, or I would want it to be reduced to 1 copy per deck for hand traps like Ash Blossom or Nibiru. And the reason being is it just makes the game just last longer, number one. And if you're in a tournament scene, you don't want it to last longer. You want it to be quick and easy. And number two, you're playing in a time limit in a tournament. If you're playing on the school map, I don't give a fuck what cards you play. But it's the tournament scene that people get pissed off because they're basically playing solitaire. The person that has monsters on the field or the highest life points when there is game called uh, wins the match pretty much 99% of the time. So if you have lower life points, you lose. Or if you don't have any monsters, and let's say it's turn one, you automatically lose on game 3 because you didn't have anything on the board. Sorry. So, Data of D, if you control a Blue Eyes monster, you can choose attack targets for your opponent's attack. You can send 1 Blue Eyes White Dragon from your deck or hand or deck to the graveyard. Special summon this card from your hand. You can discard 1 Blue Eyes White Dragon or 1 card that mentions it. Then target 1 Blue Eyes monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So it's just a Omni summon. And it's a not soft once per turn. Neo Kaiser Seahorse, able to summon a Blue Eyes by having it summoned to the field and kicked off. Whitestone of Legends, Whitestone of Ancients, just standard Blue Eyes support. Master with Eyes of Blue, Dragon Spirit of White, Alternative White Dragon, Special Summon. Blue Eyes Jet Dragon, Special Summon from hand. Ultimate Fusion times 3, Wishes with Eyes. You know, this is a decent deck, but without the hand traps. Now, Infinite Impermanence is also considered a hand trap, but I would also consider it a board breaker. I wouldn't consider it necessarily a hand trap because it is a trap card. Hand traps are typically monster cards, and I wouldn't consider a hand trap if it's not a hand trap. And then for the extra deck, because this is a Blue Eyes build, it just punishes your opponent for playing the game. Basically, Omni negates with Tyrant Dragon, Twin Burst Dragon has an Omni negate. Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon has an Omni negate. Azure Eyes Silver Dragon, um, they can't target your dragon monsters. Heretic Seal, which technically should still be banned in my opinion, is just a good card to get stuff on the board. And Blue Eyes Ultimate Spirit Dragon is it gains 1,000 attack. Draw out banish cards from your graveyard. You can only use, which is kind of useless because nobody plays banishing for your opponent. They really only play banishing for themselves. because the graveyard is a secondary um, lifeline for most decks. But yes, I will say that the Blue Eyes deck is superior in some ways, but it lacks creativity. It also lacks um, what makes dueling great. Going at your opponent with not just the most powerful cards, but with the most creative deck. My burn deck is creative and effective not because it has hand traps, but because it plays mind games. I've had so many players on Master Duel quit just playing against my burn deck, but with my blue eyes deck, they don't give a fuck. When it's just a straight up archetype, they don't give a fuck because they don't know what you're doing with the burn deck compared to with that. I have beat players with just three monsters on the field and then taking their boss monster because I literally had Sorcerer Revealing Light at the back, meaning they couldn't attack. They tributed off a high powered monster. I I destroyed them with just three Raw's disciples. Like that's how you can win. You can win with the smallest of monsters. And I find it very funny that people don't understand the value of, you know, being able to make a creative deck. Archetype specific decks, great. There was a guy that I beat that was a bestial player. Pure bestials. Bestials is a sub archetype for dragons. You can splash them into any dragon type or any Albaz deck, and it will run smoother. That's what its purpose is. You don't play pure bestials if you want to win. You play pure bestials if you want to lose. If you're a fucking loser, you don't play pure archetype, purely one archetype in a deck if you truly want to become the best player at something. You play an archetype that you feel value with. I have a friend, he plays well, he who is turning into a she plays what do you call it? Lunalights. And Lunalights have a lot of support cards. But it also plays the basic mindfuck cards. You know, I gave him some of his tech. So if, let's say, he went up against something that he didn't want to deal with, okay, he could, for all intents and purposes, use instruction. He could, for all intents and purposes, use evenly matched. He could, for obvious reasons, use because he also doesn't like hand traps. And it's not because we don't like hand traps that we want to see them go. It's because they lead to less creativity with decks. And less creativity in decks means you can't, if you don't know what the deck does, your opponent is actually going to be slow playing because he's reading all your cards because he doesn't know what they do. Archetype specific is bad already. Add to the mix that most of my cards in this deck and this bird deck are older, and most people don't even know what the effects are if they haven't played Yu-Gi-Oh for a long time. It just means that your opponent's going to be slow playing because he's going to be reading each and every one of your cards, making sure you're playing properly, making sure you're not cheating. That's the point. You want to make your opponent know how to play the game, right? Well, you can't play the game and let your opponent know if he's doing a good job or not if he's fucking around and finding out. That's the point, okay? Literally, I play cards that most people would never play in a modern Yu-Gi-Oh! I have not done any tournaments recently. I just got out of the Navy. I still need to get a car in order to go to some locals and other things. But I will be bringing my burn deck, my chosen deck, to play at locals. And the reason being is locals is where you test out your deck. YCS is where you play with the big boys. And for the big boys, I will have an probably on a side deck, but I won't have it for like the locals because literally I prefer playing board breakers, not hand traps. Because I think for skilled players, hand traps do nothing but stall a game. For skilled players, if you're gonna play if you're gonna play Yu-Gi-Oh, hand traps stall games. They don't increase the speed and rate and consistency of the deck. They done F you over if you miss time. A majority of my burn cards, they need to be ashed before. Let me state this. Ash has time time um, has a time frame to where it needs to be activated. Master Duel lets it get activated at any but it it needs to activate for a majority of my cards before that card hits the graveyard. So after the attack, during the damage step, before the card hits the graveyard. If they activate it after I send it to the graveyard, that's missed timing. They don't understand that. Master Duel holds your hand, but it also knows that if you wait too long, it's going to miss timing. So I've had some cases where my Witch of the Black Forest would get destroyed by battle, and then they would activate Ash, right? I've had some times in Master Duel where it would resolve, where the Ash would actually take care of the ability to choose a card from the deck. I've also had it where it doesn't because it missed timing. If you have toggle off, you're going to miss timing. If you have toggle on, it's going to not miss timing, period, in the story. It tells you what you can activate and what you can't. It's like the babysitter protocol in the Spider-Man suit for Spider-Man No Way Home. Sorry, I'm just being honest. It's like that. And honestly, for what it's worth, I honestly do believe that standard regulation hand traps, not board breakers, hand traps. And I'm not talking about the traps that can be activated from your hand. I'm not talking about infinite imperm. I'm talking more so Ash Blossom, Ghost Ogre, and Spooky Dogwood, Droll and Lock. Those are what I'm referring to as hand traps. Basically, something that stops an interaction from occurring. But if they were to keep hand traps in, I would want Konami to allow Pot of Greed and all the classic cars that have been on the ban list since day one at one copy per deck. I would want that because technically nobody's going to play those slow ass cards, or if they do, it's going to get hand trapped. Nobody's going to allow somebody else to play Pot of Greed or Confiscation or, God forbid, Delinquent Duo. Nobody in their right mofo mind is going to allow their opponent to play And honestly, I would prefer to be have in a bait and switch for us to be able to play the game because literally there is no real way that I want to play in a tournament for such a crappy price as a Switch 2, um, or for a price card and not a cash settlement if I'm going to, be playing solitaire against an opponent with multiple hand traps for no reason and no creativity in a bloody mind. Literally, my deck, I can have any random card in my burn deck, right? And I can play it. Archetype specific. 90% of people scoop from the first turn. And that's because if they don't have their combo pieces, they can't play the game. This has 1 to 2 combo pieces total. Everything else is just a damn good card. That's the difference between the creativity of dueling and the current meta, which is archetype specific with standardized hand traps. Hand traps don't help you win games. Board breakers do. Board breakers win more games. When I had Baron the Floor and Zeus, uh, I was going down against that. I drew into Lava Gold. I took care of both of them at the same time because it you target the monster you're going to tribute. You don't target the monster itself. It's a very weird written uh, ability because it says target monsters your opponent controls, sacrifice 2 of them, and special summon this on their side of the field. When I special summon Lava Golem on their side of the field, they're like, I can't play the game now. They surrendered because literally they couldn't play the game because they didn't have their multiple Omni negates, their soft once per turn locked on front row and back row. Baron the Floor has a soft once per turn for front row and a soft once per turn for back row. I didn't realize that until I read the damn card. AAA Zeus has a once per turn clause, but it can destroy an entire board by itself. Literally one of the more powerful cards in the game. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best card to play. There's a downfall to Zeus that a lot of players don't know about. The downfall is it can't be targeted by card effects on your turn. Your opponent can target your card for anything on their turn. But God forbid you want to destroy that monster. You're shafted. Yeah. And of course there's only 5 monsters that outpay Zeus in attack points. So technically you can't get over via attack for most players. There's above Zeus. There's only like 12 cards total in the game that can get above him. Blue Eyes Ultimate, Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate, um, 5-headed dragon, which is 5,000 attack. Dragon Master Knight, which is 5,000 attack. Um, Exodia Incarnate, which is the new like fusion monster, I think. I don't remember. Can get up to 10,000 life. The God cards can go as high as your life points, which means that if you're still at full life, your raw is 7,900, which means you technically can get over Zeus. Uh, Obelisk, with his special effect, can board wipe because it doesn't target. And Slifer can, depending on how many cards are in your hand, let's say you have 6 cards, you can get over Zeus pretty darn easily because it's 1,000 attack per card. And the one that is the most useful in the meta today is, of course, Slifer. Um, but I'm not going into like the God cards and all those other cards that you can play in a deck. You can literally play any card in a deck that you want. I literally won my first 12 matches uh, in Master Duel playing without a starter deck, just drawing 10 packs. You can make a cohesive deck out of 10 packs and still win. You just have to know what each card interaction does. And I think that's the point where people only memorize one or two decks. I memorized 4 decks. I memorized my Blue Eyes deck, my God Strat, uh, my Dark Magician Strat, and this. I've also mastered how to play Red Eyes to win. But I no longer have my Red Eyes deck. I sold it to a friend in the name. So I've got to rebuild it from scratch. Fine. But I'm letting y'all know this because literally you can build whatever deck you bloody want and still become a good duelist. It doesn't have to be archetype specific. Dark Magician is archetype specific, and so is Blue Eyes. Those are really the two only archetype specific card decks I have. Every other deck I have is just a mishmash of cards that just plays well with each other, or is a starter or structure deck specific. Um, the God Turbo deck is just 2 obelisk structure decks and 1 raw structure deck together. That's all it is. My burn deck, an amalgamation of cards that I love using and that I've play tested for 5 years in the Navy against some of the best players that have ever played the game. And I still won against the best players that have ever played the game. I won against the Japanese. When I was in Japan, I won against the world champion with just this burn deck. Just at a local card shop. I just randomly ran in to buy some cards. Found out the world champion in Japan was in said card shop in Yokosuka. Had my deck on me, asked him if I could duel him. He agreed. I kicked his Bohiny to the Shadow Realm and literally won the duel against a world champion. World champion. Because he played archetypes and hand traps, but the hand traps had no way of affecting my deck. He didn't like that I won, obviously, because I was an American, and Japanese people look down upon Americans a little bit. But he had mutual respect because we both played the game we loved. And we both did our best. We both played our best. In fact, I won 2 rounds. He won. So we played 3 sets. I won the first set. He won the second and third set. So technically, he did win the overall because we played best 2 out of 3 matches per set. So technically, he did win more than me. He was more consistent than me. But I did technically beat him. I beat him about half the time. But this was also when this deck wasn't perfected like it is now. This was 4 years ago when I barely had enough cards to make a bird deck or to barely make a god card deck. This was 4 years ago. It wasn't even close to the card pool I have to choose from. I literally have 8 binders that are sitting in a box that are sorted alphabetically by card type and card, what do you call it? Level type and alphabetical order. And it's because I've had time to sort them and organize them in a way to where I can find them quickly and easily. Maybe I'll go into another video later on about that. But for now, this is where I bid you adieu. I just wanted to go on a little rant on why hand traps should not be permitted in the current meta, and what Konami should do about it if they are allowed to persist. I know I'm a small channel. I know I'm probably never going to get heard by Konami, but I think it's an important discussion for Yu-Gi-Oh fans to have. This is your host, Lego Brad 86, signing out.